Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here alongside Mike Gallagher, and we are here to break down a four-game slate with plenty of injury information once again on the docket. Lots of big players out already. Some questionable tags to go through, and we'll take you through it. Here to do it with me is Mike Gallagher. Mike, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday?
Doing great. Sorry, I had to call the Geek Squad. I couldn't share my screen for some reason, so sorry to keep you guys waiting for a couple minutes. But didn't have to call anybody. I get called Silva the NBA, but I could troubleshoot my own computer issues. Shout out to Silva, obviously.
Well, there will be some offenses that need troubleshooting tonight without some key players. Let's get into it. Julius Randle, the first of many on this slate to be ruled out for the Knicks. So no Julius Randle. We've only seen this twice this year in the two games that Julius Randle missed previously. Obi Toppin started both of those games. One game he played 42 minutes, I think, 42, 45, something like that. And the next game he played 27, 28. Toppin's role has been decreased as the season has gone on. They haven't gone with like these small ball lineups that have opened up some of his minutes in the past. He's been kind of a straight backup to Randle. Do you expect him to fill the bulk of the role from Randle today? Or do you think the Knicks mix and match with some of their smaller lineups to get guys like Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, Miles McBride, potentially more minutes as well?
I definitely think they're going to start Obi, and to match up when they've got size on the other side and Dino Gallinari, you would assume he's going to start in the front of a back-to-back. We'll see what he does tomorrow. But, yeah, I mean, there's really no indication, as you said, with the two previous instances that they'll go to Obi Toppin. We know that Tibbs is kind of strict in how he likes to problem solve rotation issues. He doesn't really like to pull out of different spots unless he really has to for continuity reasons. So definitely expecting a pretty good amount of Obi Toppin. Obviously, we'll see some Alec Burks mixed in. Maybe they'll see some smaller stuff as well. But yeah, definitely expecting a pretty good amount of Obi Toppin tonight.
And the thing that I noted kind of looking through, Miles McBride, by the way, is on G League assignment. So technically ruled out right now. We'll see if that changes. And obviously they have no Derrick Rose, no Kemba Walker, no Cam Reddish. So like they're kind of thin at the guard spots, which makes it harder to go a little bit smaller. They do have a little bit more wing depth with Quentin Grimes there. But I had some backup power forward minutes to Taj Gibson tonight, essentially because I think it's going to be a situation where unless they which we know with Tibbs can always be a potential, they could really extend out Burks and Fournier. Obviously, RJ Barrett's already been playing a ton already, but if they don't extend those guys out a ton, then without playing Toppin like 40, there's going to be some minutes where Taj kind of has to play the backup four. Would that be your expectation as well, or do you think that it's basically RJ and Toppin getting the bulk of the 4 minutes?
No, I think that Taj gets in there. They play him at the 3 sometimes, so he uses Taj wherever he needs to. So definitely think Taj is going to be in that mix, but it should be pretty heavy Obi. Would you put his minutes? I
am at 31 32. For now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's a good number. I was thinking 32, so same page.
Yeah, I had him at 32 to start. I don't know. It's just such a tough, like with Tibbs, it's hard when a guy is routinely playing 10 to 13 to go all the way up aggressively, but we've seen it in 2 games. He's been willing to do it before. That left me with Taj Gibson at 8, Grimes at 24, had Fournier still around 30, had Burks around 33, Quickley around 26, 27, RJ Barrett around 40, because RJ Barrett's minutes have been outlandish of late.
Crazy.
I had a hard time. I almost put the 4 number. I avoided it because it's me and I can't do it, but I had left him at 39 and a half. I just I couldn't grit the teeth to put down the 4 number in front. But it's been crazy for them of late. They will be playing the Hawks. The Hawks have an injury tag to watch. It's not Trae Young, though, thankfully, which I know is great for all NBA fans, but especially New York Knicks fans, because this game is in the Garden, and Trae Young in the Garden is always a treat to be able to watch, even if there's no Julius Randle, even if there's nothing on the line for the New York Knicks, who are trying to avoid a losing record this season tonight. But they will have Bogdan Bogdanovic questionable, and Lou Williams has been ruled out already. If Bogdan can't go, how do you expect them to try to fill those minutes? They're already without John Collins in the front court as well.
Yeah, DeLon. They ask a lot out of DeLon defensively, and they ask a lot out of Bogdan, too. I think Bogdan got bumped late when he was guarded by Herb. He stayed in the game, so it's probably pretty minor. It could be back-to-back later. We've seen him be managed in back-to-backs before. unsure if he had this tag before, but it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, if he doesn't play, especially without Lou, you're going to be looking at probably a pretty good amount of DeLon Wright. DeLon Wright getting a lot of key late minutes because they really asked him a lot defensively to be their point of attack guy. So he would be really benefiting here. Obviously, Herter's minutes would be safer. DeAndre Hunter's minutes would be a little bit better. Gallinari's minutes would also be affected a little bit. We've seen his minutes. I mean, 41 in the last game. Was going really, really well in the Pelicans game. Big win for the Pelicans there. But yeah, all those guys would be affected kind of a little bit. And then yeah, Trey's upside would be absurd. We know Trey will want to go ham here after Herb and Jose Alvarado really held him in check in the last game.
I see that Gallinari 41 minutes and 27 points, and I think to myself, did I say that Gallinari has no upside on the last show? Because usually that is the curse that I lay out there. Whenever I question a player's upside, they seem to find their ceiling performance. Gallinari is one of those guys that I'm usually thinking those things, so it's possible that I put that out there last time out. Mm-hmm. Although that was probably a weekend game, so I probably avoided that one for Gallinari. But 41 minutes for Gallo is wild. Revenge spot for Gallo, of course, as well.
Yeah.
If you're into those sorts of things. All right. Other injury notes on the slate. Another big questionable tag to keep an eye on is Zach LaVine. The Bulls are on a back-to-back here. The tag was for injury management. And a couple things lead me to believe that Zach is more likely to sit this one out than play. One, the win last night, right? Like that was a huge win in terms of seeding efforts for the Bulls to avoid the play-in game, which is really their number one focus right now, is just avoid the play-in game at all costs. I don't think they're really concerned about seeding, whether they get to like 4th or 5th or 6th. I think they just want to avoid the play-in game so they can guarantee a playoff series in the first round. I think after that, health takes priority. Not only did they beat Toronto last night, but Cleveland lost. And so it gave them cushion on both ends. And so yes, this is a game that Chris Middleton is not going to play. We'll get to that in a second for Milwaukee. But I think this game might be one that LaVine's health takes priority. So I'm looking at this as like a little bit more QD than QP on the probable, questionable, doubtful side. What are your thoughts on Zach LaVine tonight?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. This is the thing he's going to play through. They said this for like a month now, that it's an injury. It's not going to go away. Probably something he has to deal with in the offseason. But yeah, he's played in back-to-backs. He hasn't played in a back-to-back. Okay, he played in the last one, but I think it's gotten worse since those comments came out. So yeah, I think it's probably a tick under 50%. He's going to probably be game time.
Yeah,
but
I'm thinking it's like 60-40 that he sits is kind of what
I'm pretty much with you there. So that changes a lot of things, because we saw a lineup change yesterday with Alex Caruso gets the start, and Billy Donovan was asked about that, and he kind of hinted that he was maybe wanting to start Caruso right away, but his goal was to keep him under 30 until that restriction came off, and then we saw him get 33 in the game last night. And Ayo, a couple minutes of garbage, so only had 22, but there was overlap. They used these guys in different combinations, and based on Billy Donovan's comments, he's definitely okay using a second unit of Ayo, Kobe, and then DeMar gets kind of staggered. That'll be their key pieces. And then we'll see what's up with Patrick Williams. Based on his comments, I think Patrick Williams is coming off the bench again. So that leads to the next question of who starts, because we've seen them start Cook a few games ago. They started Tristan Thompson against Giannis in the last game against them. So, yeah, it's a very interesting situation. Do you bring Patrick Williams and put him on Giannis? I think that's a viable plan. So there's a whole lot of moving parts here on top of this the LaVine stuff.
Yeah, and the reason that Mike brings up the stuff with Giannis is the Bulls have specifically in 2 different matchups done weird things that they've done outside of their normal rotations for the matchup with the Bucks. So it suggests that they're willing to consider things that are outside of the normal road plan to be able to try to throw some speed bumps at Giannis. Whether that specifically they've gone away from Javonte Green. So it doesn't seem like Javonte Green is the guy that they want to be able to have that assignment, even though that's sort of his role is to be a defender. It's just he's so undersized against Giannis. And the other options that they have here, I think that Tristan next to Vooch thing could be one of the routes that they go and just try to really pack it in. And especially without Middleton, because without Middleton, that does take a little bit more of the spacing. Even though he'll be replaced by someone like Connaughton or Wes Matthews or players like that who provide technically 3-point shooting, I don't think the Bulls are as concerned about those guys as they are Middleton, who, if you kid it out to the perimeter, Middleton can not only shoot, but he can also secondary initiate, which those other guys, Connaughton, Wes Matthews, aren't as comfortable with. So I would not be surprised to see something like Tristan next to Vooch as well, just to kind of clog the middle there. But we'll see. Lots of different iterations here. I do think if Levine is out, I do think Dosunmu starts.
I think so too.
I feel pretty confident on that front. You could say Kobe White, but I really think they'd want Dosunmu and Caruso as a combination on the perimeter to be able to switch Drew stuff quite a bit and have a couple different looks at Drew too. Okay. On the Milwaukee side of things, no Chris Middleton. He's been ruled out. Giannis is probable. He rested over the weekend. What are your expectations in terms of how Milwaukee tries to fill the void of Chris Middleton?
Yeah, definitely think it's going to be, as you mentioned, Pat Connaughton also returned too. So he's a huge part. If they didn't have Connaughton, it'd be real dicey. So I think Connaughton's really their main guy. Obviously need the spacing. It's going to be very, very Drew-centric and Giannis-centric offense. They could go a little bit bigger. We saw them go with kind of the giant lineup in the last time. That won't be, out there to start. Obviously, I don't think they're going to start Portis and Lopez. But I think they could kind of mix it in there when Giannis or someone's sitting. Definitely with Portis there, you've got a lot of flexibility for how you can play your front court. So it's going to be kind of a team effort. A little more upside for Grayson Allen's minutes. They like Javon Carter kind of behind Drew, so I don't think he'll be affected too much. So should be in order, I guess. Connaughton, the big's getting a little bit more run. And then, a little bit more Noir, a little bit more Wes Matthews, and I don't think Javon's kind of affected.
Yeah. The other star situation on this slate from an injury perspective is, of course, with the Warriors, no Steph Curry. We're not going to see Steph Curry most likely for the rest of the regular season. They also have Moses Moody listed as questionable, but they get Gary Payton II back tonight. And it was interesting, the last game against the Spurs, we got a little bit of a peek at the rotations, but it was also difficult to assess because Draymond Green got ejected earlier in the game in the third quarter or so. We don't totally know exactly how they're going to play this. We also saw Chiozza play 19 minutes. I think a combination of being thinner in the backcourt, but Chiozza jumping, I should note, Chiozza jumping Damian Lee and Juan Toscano-Anderson is sort of interesting there. But deeper in the backcourt, having Moses Moody potentially back, having Gary Payton potentially back, I think Chiozza's minutes are most vulnerable here. But it is of note, usually from a playmaking perspective, they use Draymond Green as a playmaker. They use Jordan Poole as a playmaker. And then they use some of their bigs as playmakers like Toscano-Anderson and like Bielitsa and those guys. And they chose Chiozza, a smaller player. And it is interesting just given the context of the injuries to the guards that they had out that game. But if they get Moses Moody back, if they get Gary Payton II back, which they have Gary Payton II back already, I think Chiozza's minutes are most vulnerable here. I also think it does eat a little bit at the upside, more of the secondary players than Clay and Jordan and whatnot. But seeing Clay get up to 38 minutes that game is like, whoa. That was a 4-minute increase over his highest mark on the season. But Otto Porter Jr. also played very well, 29 minutes for him. I think some of those really high-end upsides for these guys, if Gary Payton is back in the mix, as I assume he will be, are a little bit less likely to find their way into the box score.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So just starting with the Chiozza stuff, losing Steph on top of him being one of the best shooters ever, you're down to, if you don't include Chiozza, you're down to one ball handler, and that's Jordan Poole. Everybody else in this roster, excluding Chiozza, is not a ball handler. Gary Payton picks up some stuff occasionally, but very rarely brings the ball up. So I think Chiozza's probably getting the non-pools, but there's a chance he doesn't. And then there's another thing, too, that, don't forget, before Draymond went down, Gary Payton, too, wasn't even in the rotation, and Gary Payton's role was defensive, and he would discard the ball, obviously run out of transition, and so on. So you've got that kind of push and pull. So I think Gary Payton, too, is, obviously different positions, but I think he's more of, Draymond's backup to how they're going to substitute him. So I think those two things make sense. And then,
so do you think? So I agree with you in the sense that I think Gary Payton hit. In a lot of ways, he's used more of as a big, even offensively. They use him in a dunker man spot a lot than a guard. Do you think his return, is it possible that he's just still not even in the rotation? It doesn't matter, and we still see the same types of things we saw last game with Chiozza and Otto Porter and Bielitsa and Kuminga off the bench.
I mean, it could be. I mean, you don't need you don't need really the ball stopping stuff here. So If you were playing against a team with a like drive penetration like DeJounte or something like that,
Yeah.
then yeah, but I definitely think it's possible. And I think if Moody doesn't play, maybe it's even a little bit more. I'm sorry, if he does play, it makes it a little bit more.
I think if Moody plays, we're at most getting 2 of Chioza, Moody, Gary Payton in the rotation.
Yeah.
I think it's at most a 10-man rotation. The question is, do they keep it at 9? I think it's unlikely to be kept at 9 if they have Moody. I think if they have Moody, they go 10, and then I think it's a question mark whether it's Chioza or GP2 in terms of that role.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was playing really well though, so it would be kind of cruel to pull him out despite how he was playing. And I mean, you do need it a little bit with Cole, and I guess that's really it though. So they don't really need those minutes there. But
I mean,
it's pretty dicey.
Cole and Fultz, like I don't know, it's tough. That's the one spot that I'm like less clear here. It doesn't matter super a ton for DFS. Matters a little bit for props. But really, the thing that I wanted to note for the DFS side of things is I think like 38 from Clay is probably not a normal situation that we're going to get to. I think that's like really on the 99th percentile outcome for Clay. I think he's going to settle in around 33, 34 more often than not. I think if they have Moody, it's easier to do that. Same with Otto Porter Jr. I think he's going to settle in more like 25 most nights. I think 29 was really an outlier type thing. And even Bjelica played a lot more than Looney last game. I think that's less likely to be the case, especially against this Orlando front court with Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba.
Yeah, and a point I was trying to make too, like Gary Payton's return could affect the front court a lot. With the way they're going to back up with Kuminga, who's playing better. Bjelica, they want to still play Kuminga. They're going to need the size against this front court too. So, yeah, it's very, very unclear. We're definitely going to do the best we can. But yeah, it's a lot of moving parts here. Yeah, just missing Steph is just massive issue.
And then also Draymond Green, you noted he was supposed to be on pace for kind of upper 20s minutes before the ejection last time out. So we're expecting him to get back to that role. That's, let's say, 8 to 10 more minutes away from front court guys, so that you would pull immediately from Otto Porter Jr., Bjelica, those 2 guys most likely. I think Looney was kind of held to, I think that's about as low as Looney's going, 17. I don't think there's too many situations where he's going below that. But I do think all this front court depth with Draymond back does take off. We had seen Looney get into the upper 20s in some matchups that were right for him, which this one would look like that. But I don't think there's that out there anymore. I think he's probably like capped at like mid 20s as the high end outcomes for Looney now.
Yeah, they want to make sure he wants to play in every game he can. So, these spots where they could lower his minutes 3, 4, 5 definitely makes a lot of sense.
Also, front end of a back-to-back for Golden State of note as well. There are no definitive notes on Clay resting tomorrow. I think that's very likely that Clay will rest tomorrow. Also of note, I think the Warriors are in a position where they're really trying. They'd ideally like to finish third, and to finish third, they're going to have to probably, in terms of the standings, they're probably going to have to win like 6 or 7 of their final, what do they have left? 10 or 11 games? They have 11 games left, and they've got 3 up in the loss column. So if they went 6-5, if they went 5-6, even if they went 5-6, then Utah would have to go at least 8-2. So I think Golden State is going to place emphasis in a weird way. Like a lot of times we talk about how teams will take the rest against the weaker teams. I think Golden State's going to take the rest against any good teams. Like I think the weaker teams, they're going to just try to get the wins to lock into that third spot and say, like, we'll see Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals. So I think in a way they're more likely to go all out tonight against Orlando than they are tomorrow. I think they're just going to try to get wins where they can get them. Yeah,
this is Utah's schedule. That is not easy to go 8-2 or whatever at Boston. Road trip there. There's really, my OKC Thunder are really.
And look at Golden State's schedule if you can pull it up real quick there. Because if we're talking about they just need to win like 5 games basically to feel pretty darn good about being in the top 3 seeds. Like they've got at Orlando, like just tank off the game in Miami tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
They've got at Orlando. They've got at Sacramento. They've got the Lakers at home. They've got at Washington. And they've got at San Antonio. Like those are the games that you'd be targeting, right? As like the games that you could probably get away with. And so even looking at that Utah schedule, maybe it's only 4 that they need, So I think from Golden State's perspective, I would expect them to play more all out tonight, rest against Miami, play all out against Washington on the 27th, rest against Memphis, play all out or rest against Utah. Maybe it's a home game. Maybe they play against Utah, but go all out against Sacramento. Like, I think they're going to try to get their wins against the weaker teams.
I think you may want to go against Utah because that's who you're going against to try to keep that seeds. I think that'd be a spot you want to go with. But I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll see how it goes. If things are going great, then sit them. If they're not, then you got to be more aggressive. Then there you go. So definitely a good guideline.
Okay. Well, I think we covered everything for this slate and a little bit more as a peek ahead to the playoff picture, as we will continue to do, kind of trying to give the context around these teams and their situations so you can kind of understand where they have motivation to push on the gas pedal and where they have motivation to ease off that gas pedal as we get towards the break here. Because I think that context is really helpful in thinking through injuries, thinking through rotations, and thinking how teams are going to, go ahead and prepare themselves in advance of the playoffs. So for myself and Mike Gallagher, we want to wish you guys the best of luck in all your games. We will be back on Establish the Show Behind the Paywall at 5:00 Eastern tonight. Check us out over there if you've got your subscription. If you do not have a subscription to get behind the paywall, at least have the subscription in front of a paywall here at YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, hit the subscribe button to our Establish Run NBA YouTube channel here, and make sure to get all those notifications whenever we go live. Also, if you wouldn't mind pressing, smashing, or hitting that like button so we can continue to circulate this free content for you and produce more of it in a high-quality way, get you the information you need to compete in DFS, sports betting, and just in general enjoy the NBA. We will continue to do that for you. We'll be back tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern to cover a huge 12-game slate with myself and Mike Gallagher once again. Wish you the best of luck in your games tonight. Enjoy the NBA. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.